In this video, you will learn how to divide a decimal by a whole number. Now, when you divide a decimal by a whole number, the process is exactly the same as if you're multiplying a regular number by a whole number. The process is the same. The only thing different is we have to determine where to put the decimal point in the final answer. So let's begin by working with dividing a decimal by a one-digit number. So to begin, we have 8.3 divided by 4. Now when you divide, again, everything is the same with the process. So for example, we set it up like this, where we have 8.3 on the inside and then 4 on the outside. And we treat this like normal. So we see how many times does 4 go into 8, and that would be 2 times. So we put a 2 here. And now we multiply 2 times 4 to get 8. We subtract and we get 0. And then we repeat the process, bring down the 3, and then we see how many times does 4 go into 3. So 4 goes into 3 0 times. We put a 0 up here, and then we multiply 0 times 4 to get 0, subtract, and we get 3. And then we could keep going by adding a 0 at the end, bringing down the 0, and then we see how many times does 4 go into 30. Well, it goes in 7 times, so we put a 7 up here. 7 times 4 is 28, and then we subtract, we get 2. So we still have a remainder, which means we need to put another 0 at the end, bring that down, and we see how many times does 4 go into 20. Well, it goes 5 times, so we put a 5 up here. We multiply 5 times 4 to get 20, we subtract, and we get 0. So this is how we divide. Now the only thing is, how do we know to put the decimal point right here? Well, I guess 2 different ways. One, just think through with logic. If you have 8 divided by 4, you know it's going to be 2 something, right? 8 divided by 4 is 2. It's not going to be 0.2 or 20. So for that reason, we know the decimal point has to go after the 2. But also because we keep everything lined up. So the decimal point is right here after the 8. And so we see how many times 4 goes into 8. That was 2. And then the decimal point comes after the 8, which means the decimal point needs to come after the 2 because we just was working with the 8 to figure out how to get the number 2 up here. And because the decimal point's after the 8, the decimal point also needs to go after the 2, the number that corresponds with the 8. All right, so 2 different ways we could do that. And we could check our answer by taking the 2.075, multiplying by 4, and we should get back out this 8.3. And if we do that correctly, we would find that indeed we do have 8.3, which means the answer is correct. Let's try another example, again with dividing by a one-digit number. Here we have 83.7 divided by 6. So to set up, we write it like this to begin with, where the 83.7 goes inside, the 6 goes outside. And then we see how many times does 6 go into 8. Well, it goes into 8 one time, so let's put a 1 up here. We multiply 1 times 6 to get 6, subtract, and we get 2. And then bring down the 3 and repeat the process. How many times does 6 go into 23? That's going to be 3 times, so let's put a 3 up here. And we multiply 3 times 6 to get 18. We subtract, and we get 5. All right, so now from here we bring down the 7. So the 7 comes down, and we repeat the process. We see how many times does 6 go into 57. Well, 6 goes into 57 9 times. So let's put a 9 up here. We multiply 9 times 6 to get 54. We subtract, and we get 3. So we have a remainder, which means we need to put a 0 after the 7 up here. We bring down the 0 and then repeat again. How many times does 6 go into 30? Well, that's 5 times. So let's put a 5 up here. We multiply 5 times 6 to get 30, and we subtract to get 0. All right, so these are the numbers, and the decimal point goes here after the 3, because as we were going along, the 1 is how many times 6 goes into 8, so we line up the 1 with the 8. The 3 is how many times 6 goes into the 23, so once we bring down the 3, this 3 up here corresponds with that 3 right there. And the decimal point came after this 3, so the decimal point and the answer needs to come after this 3 as well. So it's going to be 13.95. And again, using logic, we know 83 divided by 6 is not going to be 1 point something. It's not going to be 139 point something. It's got to be 13 point something. That's the only answer that makes sense. So our answer is 13.95. And again, we can check our answer if we wanted to. We can do the 13.95 times the 6, and we should get back out 83.7, which indeed we would. All right, so this example and the last example was dividing by a one-digit number. Now we're going to show two examples where we divide by a two-digit number. So for example 3, we have 76.9 divided by 43. And if we need to round, we're going to round to the nearest hundredth place. All right, so again, the division process will be the same as normal. So we put 76.9 inside, and the 43 goes over here. All right, so to begin, we see how many times does 43 go into 76? All right, well, it goes in one time, so we put a 1 up here, and it goes right above the 76 because that's what we were working with, was that number. And so then we take 1 times 43 to get 43, and then we subtract 76 minus 43, and that's going to give us 33. All right, so now we bring down the 9 and repeat the process. So the decimal point is going to go after the 1 right here to make sure things stay lined up. And this 9 is on the other side of the decimal point, which means this next number we find is going to be on the other side of the decimal point as well. So then we ask ourselves, how many times is 43 going to 339? So this might take a little trial and error. We might think 8 would work because 8 times 40 would be 320. So if we try an 8, we would find it's going to be a little too big because 8 times 3 is 24. Carry the 2. It's going to be 344. So that's too big. So we need to put a 7 instead. So let's put a 7 up here. And then we multiply 7 times 43. We get 21, carry the 2. It's going to be 28 plus 2, which is 30. So 301. And then we subtract to get 38. All right, so we have a remainder, which means we need to keep going. We put a 0 at the end. And then repeat the process. So here we put a 0. We bring it down. And then we see how many times is 43 going to 380. So we can experiment how many times is 40 going to 380. Maybe 9 times because 9 times 40 is 360. So if you try a 9, that could work. 9 times 3 is 27. Carry the 2. It's going to be 387. Again, just a little bit too big. So we need to decrease this by 1. It's going to be an 8 instead of a 9. So let's put an 8 up there. And we do 8 times 43. And we're going to get 344 when we multiply. And now we subtract, and we're going to get 36 down here. All right, so we have a remainder again. So we need to keep going because we need to round to the nearest hundredth place, which means we need one more digit after the decimal point to get to the thousandth place. So let's put another 0 at the end, bring it down, and see how many times 43 goes into 360. Well, we knew an 8 times 43 was 344, so 8 would work, right? So 8 times 43 would be 344. So then we can subtract, and we get 16. So we have 1.788, which we can round to the nearest hundredth place by looking at this thousandth place right here. And that number is 5 or bigger, which means this 8 in the hundredth place rounds up to a 9. So our answer is going to be rounded to 1.79. All right, let's do one more example where again we're dividing by a two-digit number. Here we have 825.7 divided by 28. So when we set up, it's going to look like this. And we begin by seeing how many times does 28 go into 82. All right, so 28 goes into 82. If we tried 3 is going to be a little too big. That's going to give us, what, 24, carry the 2. It's going to be 84. We need 82 or less. Let's try a 2 up here. So let's put a 2, and we do 2 times 28 to get 56. And then we can subtract 82 minus 56. That gives us 26. And then from here, we can bring down the 5. So we have 265 down here. And then we see how many times is 28 going to 265. So you can kind of estimate a little bit. 28 rounds to 30. Maybe 9 would work. 30 times 9 would be 270. So let's try maybe a 9 up here. And actually this would work well because 9 times 28 would give us 252. So from here we can subtract, and we're going to get 13. And then bring down the 7 and repeat the process. And by the way, notice the decimal point is going to go right here after the 9 because we used the 5 for 265, and that's how we got the 9, was from the number 265. So the decimal point comes after the 5, so it comes after the 9 that we received from the 265. So the decimal point goes here, and then we repeat the process, and we see how many times is 28 going to 137. Well, 30 times 4 is 120. 30 times 5 is 150. So maybe let's try a 4 up here. So if we put a 4 up here, we do 4 times 28. This would give us 112. When we subtract, we get 25. So that means it works well. So the number was the right number. But there's a remainder, which means we need to add a 0 at the end of 7 and then bring it down. And we're going to get 250 down here. And then repeat again. See how many times is 28 going to 250. Well, we see that the 9 times 28 gave us 252. That's a little too big. We want 250 or less. Let's try an 8. So we put an 8 here. Now we can do 8 times 28. And if we do that correctly, we get 224. And then we can subtract 250 minus 224 to get 26. So again, still a remainder. So we can continue again, put a 0 up here, bring it down to get 260. And we see how many times is 28 going to 260. Well, 8 times 28 gave us 250. 9 times 28 gave us 252. So we're going to want, and actually, sorry, the 8 gave us 224. All right, and the 9 gave us 252. So the 9 is the number we want because 9 times 28 would give us 252. And then we subtract, and that gives us 8. All right, so we could keep going, but we can just round to the nearest 100th place. And around the 100th place, we look at the 1000th place, which is this number. And because it's 5 or bigger, this 8 before it rounds up to a 9. So this answer rounds to 29.49. All right, we could double check our answer by multiplying this 29.49 times 28. And because this is rounded, we're not going to get exactly a 25.7, but it should be very close to that. All right, so you've seen how to divide with a decimal, with 1-digit numbers and 2-digit numbers. And that concludes our lesson for today. We will see you next time.